Nick, my friend, good to see you here again on the Manufacturing Transform podcast this time. How you doing?
I'm stoked. I'm stoked to be here. Thanks, Paul. I just love getting to sit down and chat with you because I don't know. I always come away with something, so I'm really excited.
Well, I always learn something talking to you as well. I love the approach you're taking in growing your business. I love your origin story. I love everything about it. So for those that didn't hear you on the Machine Shop Mastery podcast, why don't you tell us a little bit about the origin of Preece Machine Assembly?
Yeah. Well, to keep it short, basically, I was an engineering student and just infatuated with tools, wanted to buy more tools, and eventually stumbled across metalworking on YouTube and bought a mill, and it's too big for my mom's garage. I was a college student, and so I had to rent a space. And so then the only mission was to like come up with enough money to pay for the rent over there so I can keep my hobby going, you know?
I love it.
And so I had to come up with like $1,000 a month to pay for the rent. And then I get to play with all these stuff. I get to fill the space with more cool tools. And then I don't know what happened, but I started working on more R&D stuff because that's kind of what I was geared towards. I was like an engineer or on track to be an engineer. And so the things I was doing to make money was like R&D, like people out in the world who have this idea and they want to basically have a product come to life.
Yep.
And so that's how we started. Like that was the kind of first income streams we had, and did machining, in the process of doing that. And I just fell in love with machining. So then we went just full bore at, just making parts. Like eventually we stopped taking on some of the R&D stuff because it was kind of a letdown. Like most of the people were individuals. They have this idea, and like I don't know how transparent you can be that like this is going to be way more expensive than you think. To like I can make you one, but if you want to go to sell them, it's going to be way more expensive than you think. And then I don't care, just take all this money that I've saved up, and
sure,
not a single one ended up working out because I didn't have the money to turn it into anything. So we, went down the machining path. Haven't looked back. Yeah.
So give us a rough timeline on this. When you got that first machine, when you decided to really start being a true machine shop, started hiring your brother and other people as well.
So it literally was in August. So we're just passing, I think we just finished up our 6th year and are going into our 7th year.
Okay.
So it was August of 2018 when I bought this first Miltronics. It was a VMC 16 or something like that.
Yep.
And then I would say within 6 months, I'd made the decision to turn, and I financed my first VF2. And that's when the decision was made that like, I need to at least make this payment.
Yeah.
That's how much income I need to keep going.
Keep doing your hobby.
Probably 6 months later, we hired our first employee, and then around the 2nd year mark, brought Tanner on.
Yep.
And he's now an owner of the business as well.
Love it. Yep.
Which is fantastic because he's like way more business minded than I am. A little bit. Yep. I want to make stuff and I want to see cool CMM programs.
Sure.
That's what I want to do. He's very on the business side, so it's been a huge plus.
Yeah, it's a good pairing. It's a really good pairing. And tell us a little bit about what your shop looks like today. How many machines? What types?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're in 3,000 square feet now. We started in 1,000 square feet. And in this 3,000 square feet, we've packed it to the gills. We have 4 verticals. So 4 Haas mills, 3 VF2s, a VF4. And then we have a live tooling lathe with a sub-spindle.
Yep.
And then we have a 5-axis, which is our newest addition. And so that's been
okay. And is that also cool. A Haas, or what is that machine?
No, we got the, we got a DBF 5000, and we went with the Siemens control.
Okay.
It is such a cool machine. We're so stoked about the DBF, but also the Siemens side.
Right.
Like, it's just fast and smooth and making really cool parts.
Very cool.
So,
Nice upgrade there. That's very nice.
Yeah.
And you specialize in hard stuff that other people don't want to do?
Yeah, for the most part, I keep saying that, and then people keep coming with really, really hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of how we started, was just, we want the project that no one else thinks is valuable and no one else thinks is worth doing, and
Right.
no one else is going to have the patience for. And we still do a lot of that. Like, we just finished up, like, our first project on the 5 was like a 3-month-long project for 9 parts.
Oh, wow.
So lots of really complex machining on these 9 parts.
Sure.
And we really like that, like being able to invest a lot of time into a project and get a few parts out of it, and then invest a lot of time into another project. And so there's only a few clients who really fit that niche really well.
Sure.
You know?
And do you like projects like that because you can really invest in building a process and then it like turns into some production, or you just really like digging in and solving hard problems?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, the more I keep saying that, the more people keep showing up with it. And at the beginning there is just because I like hard problems.
Mm-hmm.
We're definitely transitioning as a shop a little bit to also wanting to have a bit of that production.
Sure.
And have it turn into something where we can really dial in the process and really improve cycle times. But we, maybe 30% of our work actually comes back now.
Got it. Okay.
So we're trying to increase that a little bit.
So let's go back a little bit and paint the picture of what problems your shop was having, or what things were you trying to solve when you decided you needed to look at an ERP like ProShop?
Yeah, so when I saw that question, I loved it because, I don't know, the picture for us, I don't really think we were looking for an ERP. We were kind of just up against the struggle of just paperwork stacks like that,
Mm-hmm.
like all the way up on my desk. We'd get some orders 2 or 3 months out that it would literally just be a whole stack of paperwork, and somebody's entire job was generating this paperwork, and then really nobody used the paperwork. So then I had to try to find a way to file the paperwork in the back.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like this process that was like going nowhere, but just to check boxes for ISO, pretty much.
Got
like
it.
At the time, we'd been ISO for maybe 2 or 3 years when we signed up for ProShop. And so we were doing a lot of this stuff to check the box. And we really wanted it to be like useful for the business. And so that's what made us start looking at an ERP of like, how can we take these things that we're supposed to be doing and make them easy enough to do, so that way we actually get value out of it because people are doing it.
Sure. And a lot of that was for the compliance aspect of ISO.
That's what generated a lot of it. Like, nowhere did I just decide, like, man, I want these huge, travelers and collecting certs. But it was like a requirement because we wanted to do more complex stuff, so we needed the cert. So we needed to meet the requirement. That's kind of how it felt a little bit.
Okay.
And it kind of looked like we were seeing other people take those same requirements and have them be useful for their business.
Right.
Beyond just, I'm checking this box for the sake of checking the box.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's what made us kind of look at an ERP, I'd say.
And did you look at a bunch of options, and how did you ultimately decide on ProShop?
Well, so, we started with Fulcrum at first.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And we were going down that path, and then it hadn't really dawned on us that the whole connection with the QMS needed to be really solid for our shop.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I probably stumbled across a webinar of yours, or some kind of ProShop material where it was highlighting how integrated it all was.
Right.
And that's when I think I reached back out to you in 2022.
22. Okay.
So August of 22.
A little over 2 years ago. Got it.
Yeah.
So I guess suffice it to say, Fulcrum just didn't check that box. It didn't really integrate the QMS in the same way.
The connection wasn't there. Like, we were looking at having, I guess maybe a similar workflow with like work orders, but then also still having the massive folder on our desktop full of your QMS. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a really common setup for a QMS. It's just like a massive
bunch of folders, just a folder structure. Yeah.
And I didn't want that full. Didn't want to deal with that at all.
Sure. So, and then are you still just ISO, or did you get your AS, I believe? Is that right?
We got our AS last year, actually around this time, because we just did our surveillance audit like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, did you? How did that go?
Yeah, it went really good. We had one finding.
Okay.
No findings are ideal, but we, all things considered, it was a pretty easy finding for us.
Got it. Just kind of a minor type of thing.
Oh, it was super minor. Like we needed to make an NCR for one part that wasn't NCR'd yet. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of, I don't want to say nitpicky, but it was like pretty, it was pretty minor. It was like a 3-minute correction. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't a systemic issue where we had to.
Sure. Yeah, I know we're going to talk about NCRs a little bit later. So
yeah,
look forward to digging into that. So besides replacing Fulcrum, were you still needing to have other spreadsheets, other systems, other just things to kind of manage other aspects of the business?
Once we switched to ProShop?
Yeah. Like, I guess how many things did you replace or got rid of?
We replaced everything. Like if we kept anything, it was because we were stubborn. Do you know what I mean? Like we were very attached to like something that's not working, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean? So ProShop had like this, here's our solution for this problem. We were like, yeah, but I think we're just going to keep quoting in this other software, for example.
Sure.
And do you know what I mean? Like there's like that resistance to change.
That's super common. I'm glad you actually brought it up.
Oh man, that's hard to get over. Especially for me, I just am very comfortable, even if it's hard.
Right. And so tell me a little bit about that journey of maybe opening your mind to, our way of doing things over time. And because I know sometimes we have clients that just jump right in with both feet on day one. Other times they, dip their toes in, they do the minimum, and then they're like, no, I'm not going to do cutting tools. I'm not going to do this or that or calibration or whatever it might be. And then often, months or a year or so later, they get a light bulb moment, or something just is like, gets too frustrating, the straw that broke the camel's back, and they're like, fine, I'm just going to go all in. Did you go on that journey a bit?
We did. We went on that journey, and I don't really feel like we went in like kind of tapped our toes. I think we went like full tilt on some things where we probably could have just left alone, but now those things are really like we put too much. I don't know. I don't want to say we couldn't see the connection, but we thought our way maybe was better at first.
Yep.
And so we were going to keep those things that we thought we were doing well, and then really adjust to the way ProShop does things where we aren't doing well. And then we were trying to blend them, I guess.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Like
and where did you end up on? We
ended up like kind of like, man, we love ProShop, but we're kind of like, I don't know, we need some help here. Like, we've reached out multiple times. Like, man, we're just not seeing the connection because we just weren't focused on, and I think I'm rambling a little bit, but I think we weren't focused on some of the core details when we signed up.
Okay.
We were focused on like the 3 issues we had.
Got it.
And not the 5 issues that were going to come a year from now. And then they came up and we were like, yeah, what do we do?
Did that connection finally come of how the modules all work together? And
it did. I want to clarify because of course it did. Yeah, it went like estimating is a perfect example. Like we were doing estimating in another platform and porting it over into ProShop. And now that we've completely transitioned, we don't do any estimating outside of ProShop at all. That one thing alone has, I don't know, sprouted so many other improvements, I guess, through the shop.
Interesting.
Far and beyond just estimating.
Got it.
Because now we're doing planning at the time of estimating a little bit. Like we kind of have our guys doing, like looking for the 20% of problem or 20%, 80-20 rule kind of while they're estimating.
Of course.
We really don't want them like fully planning a job, but we want them at least looking at it.
And what is that translated into when you win those jobs?
It's just so much smoother. Like things are so smooth. We win this job. We know what tools we're getting. We know what stock we're getting. Pretty much all they have to do after that is go bubble the print. Like that's like the only thing that hasn't been done usually is the bubbling and the ITC steps. Yep. But it's just created this flow, like this flow through our shop, which is a lot more, I don't know, just the way it should be. I don't know how else to describe it other than the way it should be.
And that sounds like that bridges the office as well as the shop floor and kind of maybe melds them together in a more natural way.
Yeah, we've built entire processes around this whole thing. So now we have our guy up front who's doing a lot of the office work. He hosts these planning meetings once a week where he's going over the jobs that we've won, and he's basically gone through and created these estimates, and then we've won the job, and then he's doing a formal planning step. So he's trying to extract as much as he possibly can from the print and the model and the requirements of the PO.
Yeah.
And then we have a meeting with the crew once a week to see if there's anything that the machinists are going to catch.
Sure.
And then the job's on the schedule 2 weeks later, and everything's there. Most of the time. I mean, things slip, but
sure.
That whole process is just so different than how we were doing it. Like literally how we were doing it was like, all right, guys, here's the stack. Try not to pick just off the top. Like look for the one that's due next, but here's the stack. That was the workflow 2 years ago.
Right.
Here's the stack of work. Please try to do it in order.
Huh. Yeah, that is a very different process. And what has been the result? I mean, so are you seeing, less firefighting where you realize you don't have something?
Less firefighting. I don't have to do all the planning. You know what I mean? Okay. Like I'm not even thinking about it anymore.
It used to be all you. It used to be all you.
Yeah, it used to be all me. And so things were missed all the time. Things were being told to me on the floor, like, hey, can you order this, please? And I'd say, yeah, they get distracted. And so none of that happens anymore. There's a whole process for catching all of this before we've started the job. And so the results of that are, massive, way more throughput, pretty much. We're a job shop and we're really small, so it's hard for us to kind of have this ideal dream of just walking to a machine and leave with a part. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
But we're slowly getting there. Like we're trying to build the infrastructure so that's even possible.
Yeah, I actually just recorded a segment for another podcast that I'm involved with, and what I was talking about is setup reduction and this concept that you can, if you do everything right in advance, you plan your job appropriately, you document it well, you do your kitting before you actually need to do your setup, you should be able to walk up to a machine, set up the whole thing, and get your first good part without ever leaving the machine, right? That's the idealized. So you think you're getting closer to that, but you've not quite gotten there?
Oh, we're getting closer to that. I feel like we do really complex stuff, and so it hasn't happened yet. But we're getting so much closer. Like all the stock for probably the next, I'd say 3 weeks worth of stock is in a bin already on the shelf.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? With work order tags. Now tools start filtering in behind it. And so then the programmer comes up and we're getting closer.
Got it.
It's quite a feat. But
so you are using the tooling module and you have all your tools documented, or?
We have a good number of them. We are using the tooling module. What we're doing right now is we're basically uploading the setup sheets to ProShop.
Yep.
And that's how they're doing it. We are doing the RTAs on high volume projects. So it's really obvious what tool we want, where it needs to go.
Yep.
But for quick turn, we're just uploading the setup sheet.
That makes sense.
And then our office guy, he actually sets up the tools because he's like a flex guy. He's awesome. So he's doing a lot of this planning up front, and then the machinists kind of take over and do the programming, and then he kind of circles back around and does some of this tool prep.
So yeah, that makes sense. When we at our shop, our production guys would absolutely document the tool list in the sequence detail and RTAs and all that. But the prototype guys doing their one-offs, they would not do that. They would still go consume tools and retire them as they use them, but they wouldn't build out their whole tool list because it didn't make sense. You're only making one or two pieces one time. It just didn't make sense to document at that level.
Yeah, we're using the tooling module. I think we're using it maybe a little differently. And maybe that's another scenario where we need to look at like how we could adopt something different. But we have a vending system. And so now our process looks like every time we get a new tool, it gets added to the vending as well as ProShop. Mm-hmm. And the benefit we've seen is that the programmer can just quickly look on ProShop and see what tools we have. Sure. The stock might not be totally accurate, but we found a huge gain in just having, like, they don't have to walk across the shop and go look through the bins. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? They know, hey, we probably have this. Sure. So yeah, we've gone a little crazy with it. We got all the barcodes for every single tool. We have probably 1,000 tools. We put a lot into the tool module. Yeah. So those are all on the front page. And so if we ever get around to it getting scanners, you could just check it out straight from ProShop as opposed to through the tooling.
Through the vending machine.
Vending system, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have all 1,000 tools in your vending machine or only high volume ones? Or
we have all 1,000. So our approach to it was like every time we order a tool, if it was special enough to order, I mean, if we're going to keep it, if we usually order more than one, like one or two.
Right, sure.
So we always end up with like an extra tool. And so we store it, and then we want to be able to find it. Right. You know, if we ever do need it again. So.
So I want to ask about the change tack a little bit. Ask about the switch to getting rid of paper. You already talked about how you had people just generating piles of paper and then having to deal with it. Yeah. When it comes to the actual shop floor and a job traveler and people, deciding what to work on or looking at what job is coming next on the machine, or even using paper documents to get their tool lists or get, instructions from the programmer. Yeah. What's the adoption been like of getting rid of paper travelers? Were your guys hesitant at first? Sometimes people are hesitant to get rid of them.
I don't really remember. I feel like there was like some hesitancy, but we really approached it from this is the way. Like there's just no more paper coming from us. Do you know what I mean? And your computers aren't hooked up to the printer. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you're going to do other than just go on ProShop. And so at first, I think there was maybe a little like, I don't know how much I like this. I don't know if I like my screens like this. Mm-hmm. And now no one even thinks about it. Like we get paper in, like people just continue to send us paper. Sure. But that's like really it. Like everything else is just, no one says it. We don't get any pushback on it at all.
And was that a few days or a few weeks where the guys were getting accustomed
to it? It wasn't long because they're not hooked up to the printer. So like,
I like really that strategy.
There really wasn't like an option to get a traveler. You know what I mean? Right. No one hated it enough to say, I'm not doing my work unless you print me out a print and a work order. And so I think it must have been pretty seamless because we really wasn't a huge hiccup for us. Like out of the things that we've been working on the last couple of years, hasn't been one of them, is getting people to adapt to that. Sure. I think some people are a little resistant to put lots of data in, but we've just been having to show how much, like for every time you're typing something that's super useful, next time you reference it, how much time that saves you. And once you've been able to kind of show that link, that kind of way too. Yeah. 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 Especially on those repeat jobs. Are you guys using the process development? We are. Yeah. So our first step, that first planning step, excuse me. Our guy up front, we call him the planner. He's documenting everything he finds that kind of meets this 80-20 rule in process dev. And then in our morning meetings, he basically opens up all the work orders on the screen that he's going over that morning. And they're process dev tabs. And we'll do process dev as a team after that. And then so the programmers are to reference that right away. Like these are the things that 4 people looked at before you even got the job. Like, it's probably worth reading.
Sort of the gotchas that if you solve it up front, you're not going to have the firefighting later.
Right. Yeah. So we have kind of 2 rounds of going through process dev before it's even on the floor.
And then do you have your machinists later put stuff in that they want to give feedback to the programmers?
We are pretty cradle to grave here. So most of the people doing programming are also doing machining.
Oh, okay. Got it.
But we are having them document things. We're putting a lot of focus on this 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Some people want to document like everything that they come across,
right?
Which is good sometimes. And then some people want to document nothing, and we're trying to find this like middle ground where like what's the 2 most important things if you were making this a month ago from now that you don't want to forget.
Sure.
And just jot those down really quick. And we're trying to go back and start referencing those. We're starting to get more repeat stuff. And so we have had jobs show up that have process dev that's been filled out that answers some of the questions.
Right.
And that's so awesome. But we also have projects that are like, this part just looks like this part I remember doing a month ago.
Sure.
Hopefully I documented something, and then they should go look at it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool that the team is seeing the benefit of that.
It's...
Oh, go ahead. Finish.
I was just going to say, it's tough to get people rolling on, like, no one wants to add extra, like, paperwork pretty much to their day-to-day. But I really think that they're starting to see the value of first checking it. And then I think everybody's come across a work order that they really wish had some kind of process dev that did,
Right. Yep.
And so only 1 or 2 of those.
They're reinventing the wheel. Yeah. Fighting the same problem over again. Yeah. So I know you've always been a very quality-focused shop, obviously getting ISO as early as you did. Were you doing inspection on paper forms prior or in spreadsheets? And how has switching to ProShop's quality inspection changed your quality of the company?
Yeah, so that was the intent of the travelers at the paper travelers, was to, do your in-process checks, but it never really panned out. And so and what I mean by that is it wasn't traceable and reliable enough to count on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And so what we do is we'd end up rerunning it on the CMM and just guarantee checking every part twice. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so now that we're using ProShop, we do in-process check on every single part in ProShop. And so all the guys are trained on how to link their tools because we really want it traceable back to a specific tool.
Yep.
And then most of the things we need the Form 3 for still comes from our CMM.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually just because of the requirements on the part that we're going to check a bunch of it on the CMM anyway. And so we end up spitting out a Form 3 from the CMM.
Got it.
But we do in-process check on every part. And that's our validation of, making sure everything's being done properly through the shop. There's a huge, our team's awesome, but there's a huge tendency, I think, if there's no accountability, to get complacent.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you don't have to write anything down, do you even really have to check it? Like that kind of
course,
over months or weeks can kind of brew. At least that's what we saw early on was, man, if we're not documenting this, we just have no proof that you checked it. And we don't like that. So
sure.
So we do a process check on everything.
Yeah. Well,
we usually just store it for internal records.
Sure. Well, with AS9100 now, obviously that's even more stringent than ISO was. And so having those records is fairly paramount, I imagine.
Yeah, well, it just hasn't been a problem for so long because we just do in-process check on everything.
Right.
In ProShop. And I'm not saying that it was a problem, but it just kind of tends to, you can only go through so much as a really small shop. That's kind of what was happening early on was, we were going through so much physical paperwork, and it wasn't linked well. It wasn't tied to DIMS. Now it's all just so crystal clear what's going on.
I love it. So this was further down in the question list, but since we're on quality and IPC, one of the questions is, how has ProShop changed the culture of the company, if it has at all? And I know you had a really great answer for this one, so let's dig into that right now.
Yeah. So when I saw that question, the first thing I thought of was NCRs, and I think, I don't know, just the nature of an NCR and documenting it. There's a lot of stigma around like, I messed up, this is awful, and no one wants to do it. No one's stoked about NCRs. But our team has kind of switched to being kind of stoked around NCRs. We've kind of taken this, I don't know, blame aspect out of an NCR and really turned them into a way to foster continuous improvement through the shop. Mm-hmm. Meaning that like when I hire somebody, usually the first time they get an NCR, you can just tell that they're kind of bummed. Okay. And our attitude and the shop attitude is very much like, hey, dude, we're making one part. Like you're making, a whole quantity of one. That
sure.
Eventually you're gonna there's just gonna be scrap that comes from that. Sure. But one of the coolest things is being able to document it well enough to give, we can even give individual feedback, just about. Right. As in, we can filter it by programmer and then group it by cause code. And then we can see, most of your cause codes are from holes that are oversized. That's kind of a trend. Maybe you should keep an eye out for that. And we can provide this data for them to do better. And then also we can kind of create a net that catches larger planning issues,
Right.
It's been a culture of our shop. We have a culture around doing really detailed NCRs. And we love it. The shop, I think they love it, at least.
That's very cool. Yeah, that is definitely a mindset shift. Do you try to look for people when you're in your hiring process? Do you look for people that have that mindset of continuous improvement?
We look for people that have this mindset of continuous improvement, but we've never asked just how much do you love NCRs? Because obviously you want to prevent as many.
Of course.
You want to prevent as many as you can, but it's just such a powerful tool for individual improvement, trends as a shop, what kind of parts are we good at? You can filter it by material. You can just do a ton, but it only works if you're religiously documenting everything. And so having it be so easy to document NCRs has turned it from kind of this negative bummer to a really exciting opportunity. To reduce NCRs. That's the goal, is to reduce NCRs.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think there's a ton of wisdom in that. The filtering, the coming up with individualized improvement, suggestions based on programmer or setup person or whatever is it's a powerful and nuanced place to get to. And it just shows, I think, the sophistication of where you've gotten to.
Well, ProShop makes it really easy. If we're documenting things over a long enough period of time, the data just kind of collects into these groups, the way it spits it out.
Sure.
If you group things by cause code and then by user.
Yeah. Okay,
just show me everything that's happened the most.
Sure.
Well, let's just work on those one things for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So some of what you're speaking about would certainly be interesting to an auditor or a customer that cares about quality, which I'm sure all your customers do. Obviously, you just went through your surveillance, you said, but have you shown ProShop to customers as well, or customer auditors, and what has their feedback been?
Yeah. We've had numerous customer audits. Everybody. The one thing that I wish is that there was almost more time. They're usually not here for enough time to grasp all the coolest details that I'm really stoked about, but they're always super impressed. They're always, the thing that usually gets them is the material linking.
Oh yeah.
That gets everybody, gets auditors, gets customers, gets them really excited to see that. And it's something that they know needs to happen so they can, they can grasp it without, spending 10 hours just looking at ProShop.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But everybody's always stoked. Yeah, we had a.
Do you feel like it's helped you win more business with customers that feel confident?
Well, yeah, we use it as a sales tool for sure. We bring people through here, and usually what I was trying to say is Tanner and I end up going on these tangents that I'm not sure if they are sitting there watching. They're super impressed, but I'm not sure that we need to be going into so much detail, but just how easy it is to show them how much data we're gathering with a few clicks. It always just blows their mind.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when we have many clients that use the term backbone as a way to describe how ProShop interacts with their business. Is that something that you would use as a term?
Absolutely. I would say backbone and foundation. Like it's what we're building our whole business on. You know, like it's the foundation to how we do everything.
I love that foundation. Yeah, I talk about how machine shops, I believe, are like the foundation of the economy. Like everything in the world starts with machining one way or another. And so to have you describe ProShop as your foundation, that just that feels good to me. So I appreciate
that's the best way to look at it, because every process we do builds on ProShop. You know, we can't function without it. Do you know what I mean? We have to. Yeah, at every level. All the way up until accounting, and even then it kind of handles the bridge there. Yeah.
So I want to come back to something you said a little earlier, how you used to do all the planning and you don't anymore. You have your office guy who's super awesome. And in what ways has adopting ProShop changed the way that you work in your business or what you do? Or I know you still work crazy number of hours, I'm sure. But how has it affected you personally?
That aspect has affected me because, well, let me just say this year, one of the big goals, we really intentionally wanted to move me to full-time quality. And it's really enabled me to not mess around really with a lot of this stuff. Like I'm not ordering material. I'm not entering POs. I'm not doing any of the planning. I'm not buying any of the tooling. I'm predominantly responsible for QC. You know, and that's totally different than a year ago. I would have been doing like 25% QC and 25% ordering and 25% planning and, you know, this whole monstrous list of stuff. And so it makes it really easy to get something that you can do and have somebody else do it. Mm-hmm. And it's great for that.
And can you describe why you wanted to work on QC? Is that something just a particular passion of yours, or just is a strategic area?
Yeah, it's an area that we wanted to really just. I wanted to understand some of like the really intense details of basically running a CMM. You know, there are a lot of options, for lack of a better word, on the CMM, and some of it's kind of like, well, what's right? What's the industry standard? When are you using least squares or outer tangential or inner tangential?
Right.
How do these filtering methods play into, you know, how your part's being measured? Mm-hmm. And so Tanner and I, we wanted one of us to like intimately understand that, so that way we can try to build out QC even further. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's pretty much the short reason why we moved me back there, was just to dive into the details. And it's let me kind of dive into the details, run all of QC for a year, and you know, fine tune it. Like we want it as as fine tuned as we can. We want to know everything about every part.
And is your goal then to build the systems and processes to the point where you can hand it off and then go work on something even bigger?
Yeah, I don't know if this is good to admit, but like early on, like as we're starting to grow, we know we can't be doing everything. And so we'd hire QC folks, but then not really know, like I'm not familiar with all those details. So they're kind of just speaking another language. They're telling me the part's good or no good. It's kind of hard to build on something that I I don't want to say I can't trust because we were hiring awesome people.
Sure.
But we didn't.
Something you don't understand.
Yeah, like I wanted to really intimately understand it, be able to document it, be able to explain it to the machinist, be able to explain it to the next QC guy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No, I like that. That idea of, a business owner wearing multiple hats, and you already described how you've taken off the purchasing and the planning hats, and now you've put on QC to the point where you can build the processes and the systems and have enough knowledge of it that you can confidently hand it off to the next person and know that it's going to be super well integrated into the workflow of your company, and it's going to be just rock solid. But that's a hat you'll eventually take off and put on something even more strategic or more big picture or something like that. But yeah, because ultimately the business owner should be responsible for, providing the vision of the company, making sure the funding is there and the team is built to, drive the business forward. And ultimately you'll probably be involved in very little that happens on a daily basis, but it takes time to get there.
That's the goal for sure. Another big thing with QC is for us, it's kind of strategic. Like we're dying to make QC, like our mission's to make QC profitable pretty much. Like I don't know, QC inspecting parts is just always kind of I don't want to say a money pit, but it kind of is a little bit.
Sure.
It's rare somebody's just like, hey, will you inspect these parts?
Mm-hmm.
And just do inspection and bill us per hour on inspection.
Sure.
Usually it's kind of like this, we don't want it to be this afterthought, of course, but
sure,
it's like this afterthought for a lot of machine shops.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to turn it into part of the business. We want it really integrated. Yeah, we want it to be a profit center. We want to be.
When you're doing your estimating, do you estimate time for this CMM and programming and then charge for that?
We do. It's not like, it's not as, I don't know, it's not a moneymaker like the CNCs are. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean by it's kind of like a little bit of a money pit. Like you spend a ton on QC equipment, keeping it nice and calibrated, and it'd be really nice if we were getting just QC orders. Like that's our goal. It's just to have lots of just QC time.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think with the right customers, which sounds like you are very much, having, some, especially like in aerospace and really highly regulated industries, I sometimes, have heard the saying, and I totally believe it's true, in our shop where, you're delivering machine parts, but you're really delivering a document package and the parts just happen to come along with it. And so those type of companies are absolutely willing to pay for, for the purchase of the CMM and the calibration and all the instruments and the time to program it and the time to run it and the time to, and if you think of it that way, it's just as value added, even though you're not making chips like you are with a CNC machine. It is a different mindset, but you can't deliver those parts without it.
I will say it's not losing its money, but it just seems like this, I don't know, this task that we're really trying to focus on improving. We want it to be even better.
Yeah, I think that's admirable. I really do. Yeah. And that shows your focus and emphasis on being like an incredibly quality driven company, but not having it dragging you down on the financial side. Right.
And it's not, I mean, that's one thing, like you mentioned in estimating previously, like prior to us, like we mentioned that I was a little behind the curve on adapting to ProShop estimating. Do you know what I mean? We were trying to do it our own way.
Sure.
Previously, we were definitely leaving money on the table on the QC side.
Got it.
Now we're definitely accounting for it. We're starting to get more into doing like delegated inspections for companies and third-party inspections, and we're really excited about that. We're excited about being able to have it be its own service, kind of.
Yeah.
The document, like you said, the document package, first of all, ProShop makes that so seamless, but that it's almost an afterthought for us, creating these gigantic document packs. We had a 40-page one the other day. It's about that thick. And it really is like the parts coming along with it. But it's so easy that that's not our main focus anymore. It's actually creating those document packs.
Got it. Yeah. No, I get it. It's the work that goes into creating those. What would you say if you had to put a very rough number, percentage, something on an ROI for ProShop? Obviously, it's not inexpensive, but how do you even think about that?
I would think about it in terms of all the things that you couldn't do that now you can do, and all the things that you don't have to do anymore that you're currently doing. I don't know. And so if you could add all those up, like for me and Tanner and everybody here, it's definitely way more than we're paying each month. Like, that's for sure. I mean, to illustrate, like basically when we first started, we had a full-time employee whose job was to build these work travelers and to keep track of them through the shop. Do you know what I mean? We also added pictures to all of our paper travelers. We had this person filing them out on the back end, making copies of them. Like, that was one person's entire job.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we were a small company.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, luckily we were able to kind of relieve ourselves of that need pretty quickly after getting ProShop. That position just no longer existed here.
Right.
Until very recently. Our planner just started doing planning like he is now in the last 6 months. I mean, so at a very minimum, 2 years of a whole salary for one person.
Got it.
But I think it's probably way more than that.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So
in the just general growth of your shop over the last, 6 years, what would you say are some of your biggest wins and strategic moves you've made? Software aside, ProShop aside, just whatever, just in the growth.
ProShop was one of them. I remember the debate was pretty heavy because it's not cheap. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think it should be cheap. But as a really small shop, there was like a 3-week period where I was like sweating bullets. Like, is this going to be something that was worth it? It absolutely was. So it was a big win for us. Tanner and I still talk about it. The 5-axis was insanely instrumental for us. And we've only had it for 6 months, and we're kind of, debating how we haven't sold all the other machines yet. Just bought 5-axis.
I was just going to say, every future machine will be a 5-axis.
Every future machine is going to be a 5-axis. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. In my mind, I convinced myself more spindles is more better.
Right. Sure.
And then this one shows up, and just the parts it makes are, just outstanding. We had a part like this, and we held I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember my jaw was dropped at the position tolerance across this 17-inch part.
Right.
I was just
which you previously would have done with multiple setups on a vertical and spent
We
hours.
wouldn't have even quoted this part. This part was a purely possible on a 5-axis part.
Okay. Got it.
And so, it just really cool. That was a huge win. We've been through kind of a CMM fiasco here at our shop. We've been in business for, like I said, maybe 6 years. We've had 5-6 CMMs.
Oh, whoa.
Finally landed where we want to be. We got a CMM that is super powerful and super accurate and super repeatable, and we love it. That was a huge win for us.
Okay. You want to share what you ended up with? Maybe not the other ones, but
we ended up with a Zeiss.
Okay.
And the issue with all the, I won't mention them, we had 3 other brands. And the issue was that we were just coming up against the limitations of the software. As crazy as that sounds, but we were, spending tons and tons of time on phones with technicians and them being like, well, you can hard program it. And we were like, we can't hard program it. What are you talking about?
Right. Sure.
And that happened 3 times.
So the programming software of the machines, not the machines themselves, but
No, the machines were like, we had a couple really stout, really just beautiful machines. But the software that was native for it,
Right.
just didn't end up being the right fit for the kind of work we're doing. The Zeiss, most of our customers have Zeiss, and so we're able to work back and forth with our customers. Mm-hmm. Most of our customers actually lean on us for our CMM programs.
Okay.
To, because
and is that Calypso? Is that what that's?
It's Calypso.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. And so that was a win for us. It just was a long learning curve because we don't come from this world. Me and Tanner don't come from having worked in other machine shops. So we have to kind of, find out the hard way.
Yeah, sometimes that is what you got to do.
So definitely humble.
No, those
we
are good.
Finally made it. We're in love with this system.
Good.
Been running it for
it's a good combination. Year. 5-axis mills and Zeiss CMM. And it's a good combination.
It's cool.
So let me just ask you, this is sort of off topic, but
sure.
I see a lot of new startup shops that buy a vertical and they're like, hey, it's like the cheapest way to get in the door. What would you say to a shop just starting out and trying to get their foot in the door, trying to establish themselves? Is it worth, spending the more money and getting the 5-axis right off the bat?
I think so. I think it's really work dependent. Like, I think there's a ton of work that we can't justify putting on our 5 because we have so much kind of higher billing work already in line.
Got it.
And so if we're going to take it, we're going to put it on the 3s. But at the same time, almost everything, it's just been incredible to me how much more efficient it is. It sounds so obvious. I feel silly saying it, but it's just been insanity, right? Like, it just making a part in one up. It's crazy.
Sure.
And so I think you'd have to weigh like what kind of parts you're doing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If setup's a huge part of if setup because the part requires a bunch of setups is a huge part of the parts you're making or are going to make,
right?
The 5 might be super worth it.
Right.
If the machine is like an automated Bridgeport, then maybe not, Mm-hmm. And some of the work is just perfect with the 3s.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, that makes sense. Appreciate you sharing that. So
I wish we did it first right away. I will say that. I wish the first machine I bought was a 5.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. We, of course, when we had our shop, 5-axis wasn't nearly as mainstream as it is today. We sold the shop 10 years ago, but, we ultimately did have 3 or 4 or 5-axis machines, but it took us a while. And the cost, even that decision-making with verticals versus horizontals, it's like, yeah, we could buy 2 verticals or 3 for every horizontal. So,
that's what I
but, when you factor in, spindle uptime and be able to hit all the sides at once and not have to make fixtures and make programming simpler and all those things. And, it really, you can make a lot more dollars per hour off of, way more than 2 or 3 times possibly.
Way more. I think you hit it right on the head. Like, that's what I wasn't prepared for, is the uptime of the 5. At first, I kind of thought, like, man, are we just not programming this efficiently? Like, why is it just running so long? But really, our team was just keeping it running.
Sure.
And I didn't pick up on that at first. And we had to hire a whole new second shift just to feed the 5-axis. Like, that's the intention of the second shift. To feed the 5.
Right. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah. So I'd say, I bet it runs more than our other 4 verticals. And I thought the same thing too. I thought, well, would you rather have 2 verticals or 1 5? Like, there's no way 2 verticals would not perform 5.
Sure.
But the second there's GD&T on the print, I would say the 5 is the way to go.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And certainly, like you said, some parts you couldn't even make on a vertical. So if you have clients asking you for those kind of parts, then that's even more no-brainer.
It is a more no-brainer because those parts we found are just kind of expensive parts,
Sure.
If they really can't be done on a 3, there's not as many people bidding on them.
Yeah.
5-axis people are really booked, so
yeah.
you can offer 2-4 weeks. Yeah.
I just a couple other questions, and this one's not on the list, but
Sure.
There's a lot of shops out there right now that are not busy, and there's a fair number that are just absolutely swamped. Are you guys staying pretty busy? And if you had to come up with your own reasons why some shops aren't as busy and some shops are, is it the markets they're serving? Is it their capabilities? Is it their approach to sales and marketing? What do you think is the difference that is out there right now?
I guess if I had to, because I've noticed that too this year, we were kind of in that boat last year. We were a little slow last year. And so my answer would be the markets they're serving, possibly. I'm not really sure. I haven't talked to a lot of people this year, but
got it.
I would think markets they're serving and sales and marketing approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I only say that because of our experience last year. We had a huge slowdown, didn't have a huge priority on sales and marketing. And,
yep.
And then basically that's all we had to do last year because we were so slow.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say all we had to do. We still had a higher year than we had before, but it wasn't like something was off with last year. Do you know what I mean?
So you grew, but not as much as the prior year.
We grew, but the prior year we had invested in a lot of, we added a bunch of new people, and we had, do you know what I mean? Like we kind of had this vision for how 2023 was going to go.
Right.
And then luckily we were able to keep it. We didn't have to lay anybody off. But because of that, it was just like a super tight year last year a little bit.
Sure.
Because the growth that we were expecting wasn't there.
Yeah. This year you've seen a lot of growth.
This year we've seen a lot of growth. And I think it is part industries we're serving and part some of the sales and marketing efforts we did last year.
Can I just ask you what you did for those sales and marketing efforts that worked?
I think Tanner and I just got after people on LinkedIn. We're just going.
Oh, really?
After, yeah, anybody that had purchaser next to their name, we're like, hey, we're right down the street. Do you want to come visit our shop? Can we come bring you a sample part? Can just trying to get a response. And so you send enough messages that
bore fruit. You eventually made connections and got work from those companies.
One, but it doesn't take a lot. We had another instance where that got us an opportunity to do a presentation at at an SBA event or something like that. Like it was something hosted by some of these giant companies purchasers that are part of the SBA. They're holding this webinar or something, and I got to be a part of that and got one customer off of there. But most of it kind of started with these LinkedIn connections and messaging people kind of directly and trying to get them to look at you. And then our website brings in a fair amount of traffic too. We always put as much as we can in our website.
Got it. Some good organic SEO there.
I think so. I'm not a website person, but I think so. I think our website we're constantly trying to do blog posts. We've paid people to write blog posts before, to generate the SEO, like you were saying.
Yep.
I like to try to do blog posts. They tend to be more technical, and then those are the ones that do really well.
Oh, nice.
We have one specific blog post that brings a ton of people in, and it's that blog post because of the keywords.
Right. Sure.
And so
that's awesome. That is very cool to hear. Thank you for sharing that. So I would just have one last question.
Sure.
If you can imagine what your shop would look like today, if you hadn't decided to buy ProShop 2 years ago, what would it look like? What would you be doing? What would be different?
I saw this question on there and I can't even picture it because it just doesn't, it's so miserable. I know that I would be in the office. I'd be here every night till 10 and I'd be running around trying to, I don't know, mill some hole with the wrong tool because that's what we have. It would just be, I know it'd be super hectic. And it's still hectic here because we're small.
Sure.
We're a job shop. Things are moving really fast here. So it's still hectic, but it's like really controlled now. I think we'd be chaotic.
Got it.
I think we'd probably have another person or two on the payroll if we were doing this amount of work that we have.
Right.
But I don't think we'd have some of these connections that we've made if it's
Sure.
not for ProShop. So those might not even be here. It's hard to picture because like I said, it's our foundation. Like we built the whole shop on ProShop. And so we expect to continue growing as ProShop grows within our company.
Right. Awesome. Well, I'm grateful that we can contribute to you not working till 10 o'clock and milling a hole with the wrong tool and having a little bit less chaos in your life.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing everything you shared today. I really appreciate it. So if speaking of sales and marketing, if people listening to this are interested in doing work with you, how would they reach out and find out more about you guys?
You can send me an email. My email is nick@machineandassembly.com. Or you can reach out straight through our website. You can submit quotes straight through our website.
Okay.
You can call, come on by. We'd love to.
We didn't actually say where you're located.
Oh, we're in Boulder, Colorado. We're
very good.
Probably going to be in Boulder for a couple more years. We might be moving a little bit further east, but
sure. But the Denver area. So
maybe not Denver. We're looking on out in Firestone, probably. But
okay, the greater
Denver.
Greater Denver.
Yes,
yeah.
we're in Boulder though. We love showing people the shop. So if anybody,
it's a nice shop. Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you again for jumping on with me and sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and as I always say, it's incredibly heartwarming for me to hear about these sort of transformation stories and how much ProShop has had an impact on small businesses like yours, because that's what our mission is all about. So it's great to hear when it's actually landing that same way. So
incredible that you guys built this. I can't imagine how Pro CNC ran. It must have been just, it's aspired. For sure.
You should, if you're ever out in Washington, we'll take you to the old shop.
Yeah.
It's still running today, has a different name. They're still using ProShop. And
I'm out there more than you'd think because so I might take you up on that.
Okay. Well, anytime. Well, Nick, thank you again. Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Paul.